Hey Jesse,
Hello.
what would you say if I told you that we live in a world where brand new video games cost over $100?
I would say that you're a darn liar, because that's not true.
So, if video games were over $100, would you say that that's fair?
No, I'd say that's too expensive, sir.
Well, what if I told you that because of the power of economics and inflation, that back in the 90s, we lived in a world where video games effectively cost over $100.
Wow. That
So-
doesn't make any sense.
We are living in the year 2021, by far the cheapest, least expensive era of video gaming possible.
I don't believe you. Prove it to me.
And I know what you're thinking, video games are so expensive, I spend all this money on games, I can't believe...
Switch tax.
Yeah, there's the Switch tax, all this DLC, it's all so expensive, it's crazy, you know, it's unfair, all these video game companies are money hungry, etc. And to a degree, you're mostly right, don't get me wrong, video game companies are greedy, granted they're out to make money, but, you know,
You act like it's a business.
paid cosmetics and things like that, it does get a little excessive. However, the point of this video is to explain how video games in general, as a whole, have actually come down dramatically in price from earlier years. So let me wow you with some information. So,
Where did you pull that from?
I was sitting on it.
Oh,
So this is not an economics channel. We do not bore people with math, typically, and we're not going to
No.
do that today. We're
just
just
with
going
the
to
two biggest best friends in the world.
We're just going to skim the surface. So, for anyone who doesn't know, inflation is a very normal, when controlled, part of the world economy. And the way inflation works is, as governments print more money, the money that you have is worth less.
Ooh.
It has been this way since the dawn of time, and it will be this way forever.
Back when Fred Flintstone was around.
The government has to print money to basically pay its bills. And that money stays in circulation. Therefore, money is always becoming less expensive.
So can I use an example that I think you're talking about? Like, Avatar is the #1 grossing film of all time, but technically it would be Gone with the Wind because more people saw that movie than any other movie.
Correct.
Just ticket sales cost more now.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. So that's
That's
when you
smart.
see things adjusted for inflation. It's because as the years, as the farther back you go, the cheaper, the more your dollar was worth.
Ah.
So, in the year, here's my example. In the year 1994, I'm going to have some flashy pictures on the screen here to help assist here.
94, you were 23?
Don't make people think that I'm much older than I actually am. So, in the year 1994, the Super Nintendo was in its prime.
I remember this.
And as you can see in these flyers from Toys R Us,
Cardboard boxes, I like them.
new games for the Super Nintendo cost anywhere between $60 and $80.
Well, Steve, 60 is the average price of a game now, and 70 for a PS5 or Xbox One series.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. They're about the same.
So the cartridge era was more expensive. CD prices actually came down a little bit, but for this video it doesn't really matter because inflation still has a dramatic effect. But a $60 video game in the year 1994, due to inflation, in the year 2021, with the same buying power, if you were to buy that game with the same buying power of your US dollar, would have actually cost you $106.94 for a $60 game. $60.
That's a lot of cheddar, man.
Now, if you took that same concept to an $80 game, or as in this picture, the Legend of Gaia game here in this picture from Toys R Us,
thicker cartridge.
which was $75, you're looking at almost, or actually about $130 US. $130 to buy that game.
Wow.
Yes. And maybe you're thinking that that's just the generation, Super Nintendo or whatever.
Yeah, when cartridges are expensive, I get that.
Well,
Nintendo cax.
Let's skip ahead to the N64 era. Game prices, again, ranged between $60 and $80.
Wow. So it would be about the same.
Well, actually, no. Yes and no. Technically, it's cheaper. Because every year that has gone by since roughly the Super Nintendo era, gaming has actually progressively gotten a little cheaper. So if we skip ahead to 1996, which is 2 years later, new console generation, the N64, games were still in that same target price, $60, $80. I paid $80 for Cruisin' USA at Toys R Us. I will never forget that for the rest of my life.
Behind the glass.
Yes, behind the glass. So that game, remember when I said Legend of Gaia was $130 for $75? Actually, technically it was $133. $80 for Cruisin' USA in 1996 would be $134 in today's money.
Wow.
And
that's an expensive racing game.
And a $60 game is actually $5 cheaper. It's $101 instead of $106. So what we have learned here is technically the price of games have stayed pretty much static throughout the years, regardless of the fact that inflation has significantly reduced the buying power of the US dollar.
Interesting. So could the cartridge have anything to play? Because if I recall correctly, PlayStation 1, which was out at the time, the games were around $40.
Yes, because cartridges were significantly more expensive. But you're talking 20% cheaper. So 20% cheaper on $101 is still, you're still looking at a game that would have cost $80.
That is true. I didn't even think about
So a brand new PlayStation 1 game would have been $80.
Tomb Raider 1. $80.
And actually, PS1 games did go as expensive as $50.
Yes, they did. You're right.
Technically, a lot of PS1 games were $50, especially first party.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been, you're talking almost $90 at that point.
Where do they think these gamers have money? I mean, sheesh.
What's interesting, though, is there is one piece of this puzzle that technically has not gotten more expensive. And that is the actual consoles themselves.
Interesting.
Now, that is interesting. Because at face value, you think that that's insane and that can't be accurate.
Yeah, because if the games are definitely more money then, the consoles would have to be more money.
Now, granted, there are some outliers.
Okay.
The number one example being the PlayStation 3.
I
That was $600 at launch. That was always and always will be ridiculously expensive.
Now, don't forget, Sony said people will want to get 2 jobs for their system. How'd
Now,
that work out?
Well, so here's the interesting tidbit. So, how much does a brand new console cost today?
Well, if you're dealing with a Switch, it's about $350.
Well, yeah, $300 plus accessories and whatever, but
Yeah.
just the console itself is $300. But what about ones that just came out, for example?
PlayStation 5 is $500 for the
Expensive one.
expensive
What's the cheaper
model,
one?
$400.
And the Xbox expensive one is
I think about the same, $500.
$500. The cheaper one is actually $300.
Ooh, okay. Nice price drop, Xbox. I see you, Bill Gates.
So that price range, $300 to $500. But check this out: the Super Nintendo in 1991, brand new, was $199. If bought today with 2021 dollars, $385. Right in that sweet spot.
So it'd be way cheaper than getting a PS5.
Well, about $100, but I mean, if you're talking about the cheaper PS5, that's only $400.
Yeah.
So it's right about the same spot there. The PlayStation 2, which packed a ridiculous amount of tech,
I remember
including
that was $300 at launch.
one of the world's first DVD players, $300 at launch. In 2021 dollars, that came out in 2000. 21 years later, that price, $458.
Jeez.
So you're talking almost the price of a PS5, almost the price of a brand new Xbox.
Yeah.
But yet still cheaper. So the console prices have actually remained relatively
The same.
or maybe slightly better priced overall. But the games themselves, it is so cheap, comparably speaking. And that's only scratching the surface, because then you have things that couldn't even have existed back then. For example, Xbox Game Pass. Now this is a topic for a whole nother video.
But it's a good topic.
But I mean, $15. Look what you get for $15 a month.
Everything.
And actually, you know what? Let's not even look at it like that. Let's look at it over the course of a year. $180 for 1 year. That's three games. That's me buying Super Mario 64, Pilot Wings 64, and Cruisin' USA.
Okay.
That's what I bought for the whole year. Okay. If I bought that with $180 Game Pass, I get access to literally hundreds of mediocre to AAA tier Xbox games. About 100 games on PC. Countless indies. EA Play, which is everything from their sports titles to Titanfall. These are massive games. And of course, you get Xbox Live Gold, which is their online subscription.
Correct.
To be able to play games online, which was not a thing back then, obviously. But $180. So I mean, you can't beat that. It's the value proposition is insane.
For what you could do with it, yeah, it is unbelievable. Almost too many games at a time.
Yeah, and you know, it's a different world that we live in. But if you think about it, I mean, and I'm not defending I'm not defending EA and things like that with things that appear to be greedy, money hungry, just gimme. But you have to keep in mind, at the end of the day, companies exist to make money, and I know that the developers want to make the best game they can, but the parent company, you know, they have to pay their bills. And if they're selling games cheaper now than they were 20 years ago, you know, that's why there's a $3 cosmetic, you know, to change the color of your have a funny hat or whatever.
Golden armor for your horse.
They have to come up with more creative ways to make that money up.
This really felt like a G.I. Joe Now You Know moment. You know what I mean? Because knowledge is power.
It's true. Or an NBC's The More You Know.
Oh, there it goes.
Yep, there it goes.
Wow, Steve, you're so full of such wonderful information.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
But that's it for this video. So for the Adventurers Guild, I'm Steve.
I'm still learning Jesse.
And we will catch you guys in the next one.
Can you write a term paper for me?
And we'll start right now.
All right.